When I was growing up, some of my friends had horses. Now, I don't know a lot about horses, but when I see a horse, I make judgments about the horse. Boy, that is really a strong horse, or that's a good-looking horse. Patents are sort of that way for me as well. When I read a patent, I think to myself, wow, that's a really strong patent, or man, this patent is really weak. I'm not too worried about infringing this one. So I want to share with you the things that I look for in determining whether a patent is strong or weak. You could have the best invention in the world, but if it's a weak patent that protects it, then your protection is going to be weak. Hi, my name is Carr Ferrell. I'm a Silicon Valley patent attorney. Welcome back to my channel. Now, before we get started today, I want to emphasize that these are my personal biases. These are signals and signs that I look for when trying to determine whether a patent is a good patent or a strong patent or a weak patent, maybe written by someone without too much experience. I've trained dozens and dozens of patent attorneys over the past 30 years, and I've had a chance to read many patents. And so a lot of these signs are just personal quirks that I have about what I want to see in a well-written patent. So if some of the things that I really like to see in a patent are different from things that you might do as a patent attorney or different than your patent attorney might do, don't take offense. There's no bright line, hard and fast rules with respect to writing a patent. There's some things that I particularly like and some things that I look for. Okay, first of all, signal number one is I like to have a clear title. I want to know what the invention is about when I read the title. And I think this is really important because the title needs to be understood by a judge and a jury. And if they can't understand your title, it's going to be really difficult for them to interpret your patent. Same thing with the summary of the invention. I think the summary of the invention is so important, and it needs to be in plain English. It needs to be written in a way that as a untrained third party, you can read the summary of the invention and get a pretty good idea of what the invention is about. So I like to have, number one, a clear title, and I like to see a clear summary of the invention. Now, a really important tell on whether a patent is strong or weak is the figures. I love to see a set of figures that start with an overview of the invention and sequence in step by step to the point of novelty. That is, what is new about this invention? And I want to see the story being told just in the sequence of the figures. When I see a well-organized set of figures, then I know that the attorney who prepared the application probably had a lot of experience with patent drafting and had an idea ahead of time about what that point of novelty, what the true essence of the invention was before starting to write the application. And number four, when I'm looking at the figures, I want to see figures not only that just explain and describe how to assemble the invention, how the invention fits together, but I also would like to see figures on how to use the invention or how to make the invention if it's a process for building something. So these often will be flowcharts. So I'd like to see structural figures where appropriate, and also flowcharts or methodology figures that show how to make or use the invention. Now, a fifth signal to me on a well-written patent application is where the figure element numbers, that is the individual numbers of elements in the figures, are used in the specification, the description of the invention in order. So for example, starting with number 101 and then progressing to 103 and 105 and 107, however the numbering system is that's used in the specification. But more or less, I'd like to see those numbers described in sequence. And that shows me that the patent attorney who prepared the application was thinking ahead, was planning ahead in writing the application. This is in contrast to numbers that just jump around in the specification as you're reading through them. The numbers are just jumbled all over the place. It makes it hard to find numbers when you're looking at figures and you want to go into the specification and find out where that number is discussed or where that element is described in the specification. So I like to see the numbers sequentially in order in the written description. Now, a sixth signal to me of a strong patent is a patent that contains figures that were professionally prepared. And I think this might just be a personal bias, and by the way, there's many of those in these 21 signs that I'm looking for. But a professionally prepared figure indicates that there was commitment to this application, to this patent, and probably a lot of effort and energy went into preparing the application. So rather than just having sketches with handwritten numbers, I prefer to see professionally prepared figures. That signals to me that this probably has a better chance of being a pretty strong patent. Now, this seventh one is kind of a personal quirk of mine. When I read patent applications and the element numbers, that is the numbers of the various parts of the invention that are described in the figures, begin with single-digit numbers or double-digit numbers, I'm suspecting that the patent attorney who wrote that application probably doesn't have a lot of experience. Normally, you'll see patent attorneys using single or double-digit numbers exclusively to describe the figures. That is figure 1, figure 2, figure 8, figure 10, figure 12. When they're referring to elements in the figures, those elements typically start with 100. So it'll be 3 digits or 4 digits. 101, 105, 1014. And the reason for that is that we don't want to confuse element numbers with figure numbers. And young attorneys or attorneys that haven't been well trained or don't have a lot of experience often just start their element numbers with 1, 2, 3 and then go on to 30 or 40 or however many elements there are, confusing element numbers with figure numbers. Again, a personal bias of mine, but I often question the experience of the attorney who wrote the application when I see single-digit or double-digit element numbers. Now, number 8 also refers to the element numbers that are found in figures. I like to see the element numbers corresponding to the figures in which they first appear. For example, washer 225. I would expect to find that washer first appearing in figure number 2. Or gasket 355. I would go to figure 3 to find that gasket. Or 1156, a gizmo, 1156. Well, I'd probably go to figure number 11 to find that gizmo. This is a finesse, a professional touch, and when I see this numbering system in a patent, I'm immediately thinking this patent attorney probably has a lot of experience, and I'm going to just assume that this is probably a pretty strong patent. Number 9, a really great sign for me that the patent is well written and probably a strong patent, is that it contains a clear background of the invention. This is a background of what's come before in terms of inventions in this space. For example, let's say you've invented the fork. Well, I would want to go to the background of the invention and learn about other inventions related to forks. What have people been doing before the invention of the fork? Maybe it's using your fingers or using spoons or chopsticks, but it gives me a chance to learn the vocabulary and learn the basic technology, the basic techniques of practicing related inventions before this invention came along. What's the improvement in the patent? Why is the improvement necessary? And what are the benefits of the improvement? Number 10 carries on a theme throughout this video. I want to see a patent description that's really clear and easy to understand, and to the extent possible, written in plain English so that the average judge or jury can understand what the invention is. I want a specification that's free of misspelled words and grammatical errors. If I see a well-written description, I'm probably looking at a pretty strong and well-written patent. Now, number 11 is likely to be a bit controversial, and it varies from invention to invention, but I really like to see detailed descriptions of the invention That is the section of the patent that really goes into the details of the invention. I like that section to be at least 5 columns long. Now, it's difficult to have a hard and fast rule as to how long a detailed description should be, but the devil really is in the details in a patent, and I'd like to see a description that has lots of detail, and it's difficult to have good detail where every element of the invention is described when you have a very short description. 5 columns seems to me, on average, to be sort of a minimum description. Now, that varies for chemical compositions. There are other types of inventions, of course, that may do fine with a very short description, but by and large, I like to see at least 5 columns of detailed description. Now, number 12 in my list of signs that your patent really rocks is found on the first page of the patent, and it's under the list of cited references. I like to see more than just a few references cited, and the reason for this is it indicates whether or not the examiner was conscientious in doing a prior art search. If there's just 1 or 2 cited references, or maybe no cited references at all by the examiner, then it leads me to the impression that maybe the examiner didn't do the best job examining this particular application. And if the patent examiner didn't do a good job of searching the prior art during the patent examination process, we might have trouble asserting our patent and defending our patent in later patent litigation. And number 13 relates to patent claims, and this is a little bit arbitrary, but I like patent claims that are more than just a few lines long, but also, and probably more importantly, I don't like patent claims that on first glance appear to take up an entire column of a patent. The reason for this, of course, is that the longer the patent claims and the more detailed contained in the patent claims, the harder it is to infringe the patent claim. And oftentimes we'll see patent claims that are so long and so detailed that even if you tried to infringe them, it would be difficult. Now, on my quirky list of things I like to see in patents, numbers 14 and 15 relate to the patent claims. I like to see at least 20 patent claims at the end of the patent, and I like 3 independent claims at least. And the reason for this is when you file your patent application, a utility application, you're paying for 20 patent claims. And you're also allowed to have 3 independent claims. Independent claims normally start with the word a bicycle, a spoon. And so dependent claims are those claims that depend off of the independent claims. You're paying for 20 patent claims total, and you get 3 independent claims. Now, sometimes we'll see an issued patent that only contains 2 or 3 patent claims. Generally, what's happened here is that the examiner has allowed a couple of claims and rejected the rest. And for some reason, the inventor has decided that he's going to delete the rest of the rejected claims and accept those that have been allowed. Now, it's relatively easy to add dependent claims or add additional claims to the claim set to get the 20 claims and 3 independent claims. But it's a little extra work, and sometimes the attorneys don't take the time to do that. I just think it's important, if you're paying for the extra claims, to take the extra claims. You might need them later. So I'm always looking for 20 claims at least and 3 independent claims. My 16th signal of a well-written patent is going to also be super controversial. I have this bias against using the word said in patent claims. And the reason for this is that back when I was being trained as a patent attorney many years ago, it was very common, especially from Midwest attorneys, to use the word said referring back to something that was previously described in a patent claim. So the patent claim might recite a widget, and then later on in the patent claim refer to the widget as said widget. This continued use of the word said just seems to me to be stilted English and makes it more difficult for the judge and the jury to understand what's being recited in the claim. I just prefer to use the words a and the. A when you first introduce an element in a claim, and the when you refer back to the element. Just a personal bias. If you have comments about that, I would love to see them below. A lot of people still use the word said. There's nothing wrong with it. But to me, it just adds to the complexity of reading and understanding the claim, and I especially worry about this for juries. Number 17 is a little bit of a quirky one as well. I have a bias against the use of wherein. We call these wherein clauses in the patent claims. And wherein clauses are subclauses that are in the patent claims that refer to additional detail in the claim. And the reason I object, or I have this bias against the use of wherein clauses, is often when a patent examiner rejects something about the claim or says that the patent claim isn't narrow enough. Immediately, the attorney adds in a wherein clause. An example of this might be a bicycle comprising 2 wheels and a chain. And the examiner rejects the claim, saying that the bicycle with a chain was well known. And so the attorney responds to that rejection by saying, well, a bicycle with 2 wheels and a chain, wherein the chain is disposed around 2 sprockets, the sprockets having at least 10 teeth in each sprocket. So the point is that there's been a wherein clause that's been introduced as a result of the rejection by the examiner. And when I'm litigating a patent particularly, and I'm trying to find the weak points of the patent, the first place I'm going to look is the wherein clause, because this tells me that that wherein clause is probably where the distinction has been added. This is probably the most important part of the invention, is the wherein clause. And so when wherein clauses are included in patent claims, it highlights the possible weaknesses of the claim. It's like putting up a flag saying, here I am, here's the important part of the claim, attack me here. And so I just think it's better to avoid wherein clauses where possible. Now, characteristics 18 and 19 of a really strong patent are somewhat related. I love accelerated patents. I think they can be wonderful tools that are used especially for startups and for companies that need to get patents issued quickly. However, there's a problem with accelerated patents that relates to the narrowness of the patent claims. Often we'll find that the patent claims of an accelerated patent are just a bit more narrow than they need to be. And the reason for this is both the examiner and the inventor are trying to get an accelerated patent through the patent office as quickly as possible. And so as a result of that, the claims are often narrowed in exchange for the expediency of examination. So although there's a lot of good reasons to accelerate your patent application, the patents might be a little more narrow as a result of the acceleration. Also, on the other end of that, if we're finding that the patent application was not accelerated, but the examination took less than perhaps 2 years or so to get through the patent office, I wonder whether there was sufficient examination of that particular application. And so it's a little bit of a red flag to me when an invention flies through the patent office too quickly without proper examination. So those are 2 characteristics that I'll keep an eye on when looking at a patent for its strengths and weaknesses. Number 20, one of the places I always look when trying to decide whether a patent is strong or not is the first page. Is the patent owned by a company or an individual? If it's assigned to a company, I'm biased to think that the patent might be stronger than if it was assigned to an individual, and only for the reason that a patent owned by a company might have had the availability of more resources to prosecute the strongest possible patent. So if it's owned by a company, I think that's a really strong sign potentially for a strong patent. Number 21, I know I'm going to get a lot of criticism for this one, but I have a bias that a patent prepared by a law firm might be stronger than a patent prepared by an individual. Now hear me out on this. There's a lot of amazing patent attorneys who work solo, who work by themselves. They don't work with other attorneys. They don't work for law firms. I know there are many seasoned solo practitioners in this field that do a wonderful job of preparing and filing and prosecuting patents. In fact, in many ways, this is an area of law where it's attractive to people who enjoy working by themselves. But my bias is this: having trained dozens and dozens of attorneys over the last 30 years, I can tell you that this is a very difficult area of law to learn. It's a little bit like doing brain surgery and learning to do brain surgery from a book. If you learn to do this by yourself, it's going to take so much longer, and it's easy to build in bad habits. Whereas if you're working along with mentors in a law firm, at least in the early years, likely you'll be course corrected in a way that will lead you to produce better results in a shorter amount of time. So I just think that all else being equal, in the overall population of patents that get written, patents that are written in law firms tend to, on average, be better and stronger than those that have been written only by individuals, especially if those individuals are just starting out and haven't had the benefit of mentorship. So again, it's hard to know in the individual case, but overall, my bias is I look to see whether there's a law firm, especially a law firm I know that's written the patent application, probably there's a likelihood that patent will be stronger. Now, I said at the beginning there would be 21 signals or personal biases that I have when looking at patents to determine whether they're strong patents or maybe not quite as strong patents. I've got 2 more. I might have lost count, otherwise these will be bonus. So the first one of these next 2, these bonus reasons, is I check whether the patent was written after 2013. Now this is a bit of a crazy one, and again, put your comments in the comment section below if you disagree with me here. But there have been periods in the last 20 to 30 years where the patent system has gone through some difficult times. And a period, especially around the dot-com era, 1997, 1998, 1999, there were a lot of labor problems happening in the patent office during this period. There were union issues, there were problems with patent attorneys being hired into corporations. The dot-com companies were just pulling it in as much patent talent as they could to file huge numbers of patent applications. And consequently, the examination in general that was happening in the patent office may not have been quite as strong. I also think there was a period in the mid-2000s where a similar kind of event occurred where prosecution in the patent office wasn't quite as strong. Now, I will say this, that there was a change in the patent law around 2013, 2014 with the American Invents Act, and the Patent Office, to their credit, spent a lot of time and effort training and retraining their examiners to do a good job of patent examination. And by the way, patent examiners do a good job. They're by and large a very conscientious group. The workload is huge, and they do, by and large, do a great job of examining patents. But especially as a result of the training around 2013, 2014, I think the examination process improved a lot. Maybe to the extent where it got extraordinarily difficult for a short period of time to actually get patents from the patent office because the examination was so thorough, especially in the computer arts. So if I see patents that were filed around 2013, 2014, 2015, especially in some of the more technical arts, then I'm expecting that this probably is a pretty strong patent because it was well examined. Now, as a final bias or a signal that I have that a patent may be pretty strong is I look to see whether there's a continuation application still pending for that issued patent. Now, the advantage of having a continuation application pending is that a continuing application has all of the same specification as the parent application, but because it's pending, we're able to often correct problems that might come up in an issued patent. So for example, if an issued patent goes into litigation and there's some problems with minor wording in the specification or problems with wording in the claims, it's possible for us to go in and change the the continuation application to correct some of those issues. And so by virtue of having a continuation application pending, it actually makes the issued parent application that much stronger. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that I was going to provide you with a list of my 21 plus a couple of bonuses, 21 signals as to what indicates a really strong patent. Well, if you'll go down to the first pinned comment below, there'll be a link that you can click on, and click the link and we'll send you a list of the 21 signals that indicate a really strong patent, at least in my opinion. As I mentioned, these 21 are really my personal biases. You may have a completely different set. In fact, if you have other ideas as to what makes a strong patent or what signals a strong patent, please share with us in the comments section below. We all would love to hear from you and learn some other ideas as to what makes for a strong patent. Thank you very much for joining me on the video today. I look forward to seeing you next time.